This is Kellie Nightlinger with Wild Woman Outdoors. I'm here doing my presentation for the day, but I'm doing my rebounder and my restriction bands. And so today I wanted to talk about how in our modern society, in our modern life, especially here in the United States, we have a lot of disease. And we have a lot of people who are fat, sick, nearly dead. We actually are seeing lifespan shorten for the first time in the United States recently, even though the worldwide longevity is skyrocketing up. And so I want to talk today about how a lot of the answers that we're looking for are all around us in the ancestral wisdom. We've just forgotten it. We have lost our way in a lot of cases. And so one of the things that I'll start off with is just talking about some of our basic needs as human beings. We need light, we need water, we need food, we need sleep, and life is also enhanced when we have a sense of community. Loneliness is actually a killer, and it's on the rise, by the way, in our modern life. So I'll delve into a few of these things, especially light, and talking about sun. So in the past, our ancestors worshipped the sun. There were sun gods. The sun is mentioned in a lot of different religious texts. And he was a deity in many cultures. And some cultures even shaved their head to get more sun. And so as human beings, we're all quite different. We have a lot of different levels of melanin, or lack thereof, in our skin, which was mostly from wherever our ancestors came from. And most mammals on the planet, usually unless they're terrestrial mammals anyway, bred to be hairless, most have hair or fur. And so that was to regulate their systems, and they knew when to go in the shade and how much sun to get, how hot to get, and how cool was okay. And so our ancestors did as well, and they had it nailed down. So let's just take the teepee, for example. So at night they might have a fire, a communal fire, where they would cook their meals. They would be looking at the infrared light, visible and non-visible light spectrum from the fire, which was very stunning. And then that fire would go down after dinner and go out eventually, unless it was really cold. And then they might stay up and stoke it, but then it was time to go to bed. And our ancestors would be out in the sun at appropriate times throughout the day. And so they were sun gazers. And there's an ancient art of sun gazing. So we were fed a lie in the United States. The World Health Organization, by the way, lists sun as a class 1 carcinogen. But actually the sunscreens are carcinogenic as well. The modern sunscreens. If you use something like coconut oil or other natural oils, then that can help. Or if you are on showing afraid, like I was the first person to do that, first person casted and first couple duo to do that. I rubbed mud on my body because I came from Alaska in wintertime, and I was a underground miner. And so I had a light skin. I wasn't going to tanning because I worked 16 to 18 hours a day. And so I also didn't know that I was going very long in advance, and all I was told was I was going to Africa. So suddenly this light-skinned person was thrust into 112 degrees Fahrenheit on a continent that I'd never been, in a latitude I'd never been. So, but it worked out great because I just, you know, tried to think like an ancestor, and I rubbed mud on my body, and that kept me from most of the scorching sunburns, and then my body adapted. And I actually kind of got a little leathery, almost like scales in a way on my skin. I looked like a lizard by the end of it. So anyways, I didn't have the opportunity to interview ancestors before going to Africa that may have lived in Africa. So I was just kind of running blind, but I followed my ancestral instincts. And so you need to kind of just think like an ancestor. So one thing that I want to talk about also, so let's get back to the skin cancer scares. So when you get up in the morning, the most important thing to do is to go out and do some sun gazing. And there's even an ancient yoga technique called sun salutation. And that really gets your day going. And that's really important because you're actually creating the melatonin needed to sleep properly and create all your proper hormones in that first few minutes of sunlight in the red light spectrum in the morning. And then something that modern humans do that is very detritus and I should say deleterious to our bodies and not healthy is we have way too much blue light in the afternoon. So blue light is okay, you know, in the morning, between morning and midday, but after midday, and I might have misspoke because you get your red light in the evening at the sunset. In the morning is the blue light. The blue light is the shortwave light, and it's seen in more of the blue spectrum. And so the reason why all of this is important is we have our cells in our body make up all of our organs, and inside of those cells, the batteries, or the capacitor, is the mitochondria. And the mitochondria are ancient bacteria that now are part of us. And we have 10 quintillion mitochondria in our body, 100 times more mitochondria than genes. Actually, I believe it's 1,000 times more mitochondria than our genes. And so we are more mitochondria than we are our genes. So it's pretty interesting when you think of it that way. And they are fueled by light. And so that's why it's important to limit your blue light, your non-native light, and actually turn a lot of my lights off. I'll use a candlelight or light in the red spectrum when I'm getting closer to bedtime. And I wear blue blocking glasses anytime after the sun is set inside the house, and I turn off all extra lighting, and I sleep a lot better. It's not disrupting my circadian rhythm. Every cell in your body pretty much has a circadian rhythm. And so, okay, let's go back to the scares of cancer. So if you go out in the middle of the day in a hot latitude and you get sunburned, your chances of cancer increase immensely. But if you go out in the morning when the sun is just coming up over the horizon and you practice the ancient art of sun gazing, you don't want to look at the sun when it's at its peak or even after its first few minutes because it'll cause retinal damage and eye damage. But if you do that in the early morning, it actually is activating the retinal pathways in your eye, the melanopsin, that helps set your circadian rhythm for the day. And as modern day Americans, most of us live in cities. Most of us don't spend very much time outside. 30% of people in the industrialized countries around the world are shift workers or significant other of the shift worker. So kind of a second phase shift worker. They're staying up, eating the meals at the same inappropriate times. And they're seeing, of course, a massive increase in disease and shortened longevity. And there are things that you can do to offset that, to reset the circadian rhythm for you. So let's talk a little bit more about the things that our ancestors did as far as sun. So depending on where they lived, they had probably a similar melatonin, or I should say melanin, on their skin that was associated with their latitude. Now, of course, there were some ancestors that migrated to different places, but their bodies learned to adapt, and they adapted culturally to handle that situation that they were in. So, of course, if you're in a northern latitude, you have a lot less good sunlight to fuel your mitochondria in the wintertime. You've probably heard of seasonal affective disorder. And in our modern life, we can combat that by going to the tanning booth, especially if you're asking for UVB rays. You can go to red light therapy. You can get better lighting, and that you can look for, and I can cover that in depth in other videos if you're interested. You can go to sunnier places on vacation in the wintertime. You can also do saunas. So that's infrared light, and depending on what kind of sauna you're using, it's either in the visible spectrum or non-visible spectrum. There's also, I think I mentioned, red light therapies. Not only can you go to some in major cities around the world, or even in smaller places around the world now, but you can actually buy a Juve light, is my favorite one that I'm saving up for, and it's a LED light, so it doesn't get hot, and you can buy them in different sizes. And then, of course, you can get like the proper lux lighting for your morning light, so that you're giving yourself that burst of sun, or fake sun in this case, but light in the same visible spectrum and the same lux that you would get from viewing the sun as it's coming up. And you can do that by purchasing products. And if you don't have a lot of money, you can just get them used online. For example, this rebounder was a few $100s new, and they go all the way up to about $1,000, and I got this for $25. So not having money is no excuse. What's more important, your health and your longevity and your health span, or eating junk food and having all kinds of diseases and not taking care of your body. Remember, garbage in, garbage out. So yeah, the mitochondria are what gives us life. When our mitochondria die, we human beings die. And so yeah, I've added a lot more ancient wisdom back into my life, and I feel a lot better. And so, especially if you're spending a lot of time in blue light, or you have a lot of screen time, or you're on your phone for 8 hours a day, like most people in the United States, or more, if you're maybe a younger person, especially if you can take in like all the video games and all that, then they're getting toxic, not just bad lighting and blue light from the screen, but also EMF radiation, or non-native EMF radiation, which, really our diseases increased in this world when the Industrial Revolution happened, and people started to move to urban centers and rely on non-native lighting and using non-native EMF to power their homes. And you might think, well, that's no big deal. We've been living with that for a long time. Well, that's when disease really started to skyrocket. And the more we rely on non-native EMF, the more unhealthy we get as a population worldwide. And with 5G, it is so far off the charts of anything that this planet has ever seen before. It's got a lot of issues that we're going to have to overcome as a species to survive. It might sound kind of crazy to say that, but I, for one, am saving up for a product that has a 10-year battery that's fueled from water, and it doesn't have any electromagnetic field that it's emanating, but it's protection for my home, and there's also some that are more at the personal level. And I have an EMF proof cell phone case because my cell phone is probably like 5 supercomputers from the 60s it's emanating, and anytime I have it next to my body, that part of my body starts to burn. If I have it in this pocket, this part of my body will burn. And there's people that get cancer wherever their cell phones have been. And my friend just this week, she is an artist, and she posted a picture of herself with her hand, and the capillaries in her fingers were all burst from the hand that she carries her cell phone in. And all these people running around with all these headsets on, which I do too, but I try to limit it, or I try to just have one in my ear. And then I also have some that don't use EMF. It's just a little hard for me to get them to stay on my ears. And they use air to transmit the sound. So it's not directing any kind of EMF into my ears, which that's what I prefer. And so we see a lot of these people, you know, when you're flying or traveling, all these young people with all these headsets on, and they don't realize that when they're my age, they're probably going to be experiencing a lot of cognitive decline. So you can also see an increase in Alzheimer's, and you can see it in things like autism. And there's a lot of different, reasons why people propose there are more people getting sick from those things. But the more toxic load you put on your body, the more difficult it's going to be to overcome any disease. And so if your toxic burden of EMFs, non-native EMF, is through the roof, our ancestors only had native EMF to worry about. And so they would combat that with things like sweats, like a sweat lodge, which we might call a sauna today. And so they had their ways, the sunlight helped to detoxify them as well and refuel their batteries. And they would know ancient herbs that are still available to us today. If you can just tap into that ancient wisdom, that's one of my fortes, is wild edible and medicinal plants for everyday life and healing. And so those are a few things that I wanted to cover today. So hopefully that's kind of helpful just to get you to think. So just remember, we're sunlight beings. But before I close, I would like to read this to you. All right. So this is one of my favorites here. Let's see if I can just set this up here. That way I don't know if it's going to let me. Maybe not. I'll set it down there, I guess. Hi, Juno. Are you coming to join me? I'll just hold it. So, all right. So this is written by Chief Sealth, or Seattle. And in 1854, the United States government offered to buy 2 million acres of Indian land in the Northwest. Below is a translation. Let me see if I can just sit it up here, by the way. That might be easier, then I can have a little better eye contact with the camera. Bear with me 1 second here. There, that should work. Below is the, I'm looking into the sun here. Maybe I can't do that either. Plan B. Below is the translation of Chief South Seattle's reply to Franklin Pierce in December of that year. It has been described as the most beautiful and prophetic statement on the environment ever made. So I've had this for years, and I read it a lot, actually, and I feel like it was very, full of ancient wisdom. Okay, here I'll begin. The great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. The great chief also sends us words of friendship and goodwill. This is kind of him, since we know he has little need of our friendship in return. But we will consider your offer. How can you buy or sell the sky, the warmth of the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air, the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing, and every humming insect is holy in the memory and experiences of my people. The sap which courses through the trees carries the memories of the red man. So when the great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land, he asks much of us. This we know, all things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. Excuse me. But we will consider your offer to go to the reservation you have for my people. We will live apart and in peace. One thing we know, which is white man may one day discover, our God is the same God. Juno's chewing a bone in the background, so sorry about that. But she's eating ancestrally, so that's great. It's a deer bone. So one thing we know for sure is that one day you may discover that our God is the same God. You may think now that you own him as you wish to own our land, but you cannot. He is the God of man, and his compassion is equal for the red man and the white. The earth is precious to him, and to harm the earth is to heap contempt on its creator. The whites too shall pass, perhaps sooner than all other tribes. Continue to contaminate your bed, and you will one night suffocate in your own waste. But in your perishing, you will shine brightly, fired by the strength of God, who brought you to this land, and for some special purpose gave you dominion over this land and over the red man. That destiny is a mystery to us, for we do not understand when the buffalo are all slaughtered, the wild horses are tamed, and the view of the ripe hills blotted by talking wires. Where is the thicket? Gone. Where is the eagle? Gone. And what is it to say goodbye to the swift pony and the hunt? The end of living and the beginning of survival. So we will consider your offer to buy this land. If we agree, it will be to secure the reservation you have promised. There perhaps we may live our brief days as we wish, when the last red man has vanished from the earth, and his memory is only the shadow of the cloud moving across the prairie. These shores and forest will still hold the spirits of my people, for they love this earth as a newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. So if we sell our land, love it as we've loved it, care for it as we've cared for it, hold in your mind the memory of the land as it was when you took it, and preserve it for your children and love it as God loves us all. One thing we know, our God is the same God. This earth is precious to him. Even the white man cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may all be brothers after all. We shall see. So a couple things that I'd like to mention. So again, that was by Chief Seattle, and it was written in 1854. So I have a lot of Native history, Native knowledge. I've sought out a lot of elders in various communities I've lived in, and I haven't had my genome tested, my DNA tested to see where my ancestors are from. That's something I want to do this year. But I have always felt that I have a connection, that Native people are my kindred spirits. And I have always followed a lot of their spiritual beliefs. And so for me, when I started, learning from a lot of tribal elders around the world, but especially right here in Michigan where I grew up, the Ojibwe people, for example, also known sometimes as Ojibwa or Chippewa, and they basically taught me that, all Native people and all people should respect Mother Earth, and that we all come from the same grandmother, and that basically they believe that all people should be treated equally regardless of color or anything else, that all life is just as important as all other life. And to me, that really resonated. And they taught me the symbiotic relationship of all living things. And I learned this even as a child, just from watching nature, but it really resonated with me and started to make a lot more sense. And something that I've learned also is that we are not only symbiotic in this world with all living things, but that we are nature and we have a symbiosis within us as well. And so part of our symbiosis depends on light. And it also depends on all the other things I mentioned and many more things, including even just how we handle stress, for example. So ancient wisdom, they would be stressed by, maybe doing some exercise, maybe doing a sweat lodge, meditation, fasting. Fasting is very important in a lot of indigenous cultures. They might go for a spirit walk or, month-long fast where they might be on a vision quest. And so they were very aware of the need to kind of detoxify and de-stress. And in today's world, we're not very good at that. And not to mention, they would have some stresses probably from interrelationships and intertribal and even wars and death and that kind of atrocity. But they didn't have the stress of driving in traffic and being stuck in a traffic jam. They might have stress from running from running away from a buffalo that might be trampling them as they're trying to spear another with an atlatl or something of that nature, or a bow and arrow. But they didn't have the same constant stresses. So another tip that I would like to share is when you get up in the morning, don't look at your phone for the first half hour, because immediately what happens is you turn on your phone and you immediately feel stressed, especially if you see a negative email or a negative text message about something you have to do for the upcoming day. And it doesn't set the tone for your day. It immediately puts you in that fight or flight response, that stress response. And the first part of the day, especially, that's really important because your body is still waking up. And so there's a lot of cortisol coursing through your veins, and in that first, you're coursing through your body in that first few minutes that you're awakened. And so you want that to be kind of a peaceful, calming, uplifting, positive time. Be a great time to go outside and do some stretching and watch the sunrise if that happens to be the time that you're getting up. And instead of setting the tone for the day by a lot of stress. And so their stresses were a lot different than ours, but we can take a step back and go back to ancestral wisdom and de-stress our bodies, detoxify our bodies, get rid of a lot of the non-native electromagnetic field. This is what she's chewing on. And just get back in touch with nature. Most of us live in a nature deficit right now as well. So those are just some things that I would like to encourage you to do and maybe just bring more awareness to you. And so don't fear the sun, just respect the sun. Maybe don't go out at midday if you are afraid of any kind of cancer. Most cancer is caused, skin cancer, from going out midday and getting bad burns. If you respect the sun, you don't ever get burned. And you understand how to treat your body with natural sunscreens instead of using toxic sunscreens. So hopefully you've gotten something from this today, and maybe you'll learn more about what a sun salutation is and incorporate natural light and limit your blue light in the evening and at night. And you'll see yourself recover from a lot of things that you didn't know that you could. If you've tried diet and exercise and other modalities to try to heal your body and you can't, you're probably overloaded with really bad blue light toxins, and it will affect you exponentially as time goes on. And so that will affect your quality of life and your lifespan and your longevity. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. You can reach me at kellienightlinger@yahoo.com or Wild Woman Outdoors. My email is listed there as well. And you can follow me along on social media and hit subscribe with notifications if you're enjoying these videos and you want to make sure that you don't miss them. So I appreciate your following along and listening and enjoying my health journey. So get outdoors and go wild.